Welcome to the Rise and Form podcast.
Well, and so you said something a moment ago about limits. And I think that's the other thing that I spend a lot of time talking about with people and having to talk to myself about is the beauty of our humanity, a celebration of the fact that we have limits, and that's on purpose. That when God gave us dominion, he gave us a limited dominion. We cannot control everything, and we're not supposed to. We cannot be everywhere at once. We cannot see the future. We are not unlimited in our capacity and our energy, and that's not because of the fall. God did that before the fall happened.
Yeah.
And so there's something good about it. It's good. We don't need to push back against it. We don't need to hate it. We actually, it's really good for us to lean in and say, oh, I'm so glad that I'm finite. I'm so glad I need sleep. I'm glad that I need healthy food for my body to be able to function. I'm glad that I can't be in two places at once, no matter how many devices I have in front of me. I'm glad. It's good. And Jesus chose this on purpose so that he was human on purpose with us to understand this form of weakness, which is not sin. It's just weakness. And it's not bad. And so I think that's another hugely important thing, is just to recognize our bodies are limited for a reason. And it's actually God's design.
Yes. We need to honor that, honor how the Creator made us, and I'm saying this like, I don't do this well at all, but this idea of like our limits, our finitude is like, I try to remember that, like, no, we do need to sleep. Like a lot of the ailments, the mental illnesses, it's like, okay, if you're not sleeping, if you're not eating, like these are basic things we have to rule out first, just like, how is your body, in this? And if we don't honor that, we're not honoring our bodies. We're not honoring how we were designed. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about a dolphin is limited to the water, right? And that's where they thrive. And if they were hated on God for making them so beautiful and wonderful that they can't be on the land, I guess this is the Little Mermaid story, but it's like, but it's something like that, isn't it? That we can be like that. And it's like, no, this is how God made us, and how wonderful it is, like that we can, do these things with our bodies. And, but you said design in there, Beth, and I was thinking about that, your understanding of God's intended design for the body. And I love that you referenced Genesis earlier. So maybe we can just talk about that, and what healthy physical functioning is, according to God and according to his plans for us.
Well, I think there's multiple directions I could go with this. So I want to make sure that I'm making good use of the time. We talked a little bit about the importance of what we put into our bodies. I think obviously that's an element of our stewardship, that we're putting things in our bodies. We're meant to put things in our bodies that actually cultivate goodness. And that includes eating healthy as best we can, spending time exercising and drinking plenty of water, all of those things. And we talked about sleep. We talked about the importance of planning for that. I think what I want to just touch on here is the way that we spend our time, the way that I often will talk about it like a budget. So just in the same way that you only have so much money in the bank account, you only have so much energy each day. And so you have to budget it. And whatever you choose to do, whatever you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. And so I will sometimes sit with folks and just say, let's just look at your calendar. Let's just look at what's in front of you, especially somebody that's got a ton of stress. Usually in my intake process, I will end up asking somebody if they Sabbath, if they like actually take time to put the work completely down, whatever that might look like in the week. We would call that Sabbath as Christians, right? But we need to look at that. We need to look at the balance between your work and your rest and your play. And not just in terms of what's on the calendar, like how many hours you're working versus how many hours you're at home, but more, what is your mental energy going towards, both when you're at home and when you're at work? When you're spending time relationally with someone you care about, where's your mental and emotional energy? Are you present? And I love to talk about presence with people, because when I look at Jesus, obviously Jesus is the most holy and perfect human, the only holy and perfect human ever to walk this earth. One of the things that I think when I read stories about him, and I read stories particularly about women who were felt so safe with him in a culture where that would not have been the norm, right? Women who felt so safe with him, who approached him very openly without fear, right? That means there was something about him. I'm feeling emotional now too. There was something about him that was so inviting. And what is that thing? We all need it. What is it? Well, Jesus was 100% present. He was not what I call bouncing with, I'll say we often we're bouncing into the future or into the past. We're not present. What does it look like for us to be 100% present? Whether we have 100% of our mental and emotional energy going for us, or we only have 10% or 20%, that matters, but we can be present. What does it look like to be present in whatever situation we're in? And as counselors, I mean, we know, right? Like that's hugely important. We have to have a ministry of presence. We have to offer a non-anxious presence. Those are words that we use a lot, right? But this is for everybody. This idea that living in a body that is healthy, being a healthy person includes being present.
Wow.
Living in today, in this moment. And
Wow.
we're not good at that. We are not good at that.
No. I'm just hearing my son saying, "Hey dad, hey dad, hey dad, hey dad," and I'm trying to be present to that. But so like holding parents in mind right now, because I know we're in finite bodies, we have finite energy, and having toddlers is hard to be present to all the time. Yeah, I love that. I don't know if it was Brene Brown who said this. I think it might have been, which is the idea that we're tired because we're not living wholeheartedly. And to be fully present is to be like wholeheartedly there, not half-heartedly there. And that's so true because, you know, whenever you're resisting being somewhere, you're using half your energy to not be there, right? Yeah. And that's how I feel a lot of the time as a parent. Or if you're on a date with your wife or with your partner or whatever it is, right? And you kind of like feel some resistance, like I want to go home and watch the game or something, confession, you know, you're not.
I'm a telling you.
Yeah, she's gonna hear it. She already knows it. But you know, just if we can just get rid of that pressure and just be there, and that is so good. That's.
And then it doesn't mean that. I want to be really clear because I think it's easy to feel a lot of shame. Like, oh no, I'm not fully present. I don't, you know, even what you said about the toddler saying your name over and over and. Being fully present doesn't mean being without sin. Those are two different things. So like I can be fully present and still sin against you by being like, I can't, I'm yelling at you because you're driving me crazy or whatever. But I do think it's important for us to recognize that if we can lean into, this is so much work that I do with clients a lot. If you can lean into the beauty and the goodness of being present, you can more fully be both self-aware and self-compassionate when those moments come when you don't want to be there, or when you are feeling frustrated or afraid or angry, whatever it is. You can lean into that with curiosity rather than so much what I would just call sort of moralism that is so rampant, especially among Christians, where we just slap a judgmental label on something's wrong with me. I can't believe I'm such a bad dad because you're saying my name 20 times in 10 seconds and I shouldn't care. That should be fine with me. Well, maybe your kid is being, who knows, you know,
no,
but
you can
to
say
recognize that but to recognize that in that moment, if I can approach myself with some compassion that,
because that's present too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It more gives me the ability to do something that will be helpful. For example, one of the words I use with my kids is, I will say, guys, I'm feeling overstimulated. I need just like 3 minutes and I'll be right back. Overstimulated is a word that we use because, well, first of all, I have a lot of ADHD people in my home, and so they understand what overstimulation feels like. But secondly, it is not an emotionally charged word. It's like everybody gets overstimulated. Feeling overstimulated, I need a minute. And actually, when I come back in a minute, I'll be a little bit centered because I just need to breathe. I just need some quiet for a second. That's okay. That's, you know, and that's different from lashing out, which might be my MO. If I get overstimulated and don't do something to take care of myself, to care for my body and my mind, then I'm more prone to sin.
Yeah, that's really good. I think of that kind of idea of also like spoons, you know, we have in a day, how many spoons we have or how much capacity we have. And even Jesus in his human form was he had to sleep, right?
Yep.
And so he could be present the next day. So he probably had to say no sometimes. I need to go and be with my father. And he was really good at handling interruptions to wherever he was going because he was rested and, you know, because he had boundaries, I guess you could say, like, you know, this is where I'm headed. I need to go do this, you know, and that's what's important to him. So, yeah, it's good that it's not always about just people pleasing and saying yes to everything, and that
Right.
there is actually, it's really important to look after your own body and your own energy so that you can show up.
Right.
Yeah, it's the concept of like when you're in an airplane and they're giving you instructions and they say, if the mask comes down, put your own mask on first and then put on someone else's mask.
Yeah,
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 it's good advice.
Right.
yeah.
Like,
that'll
what good
keep
are you if
going.
you're all passed out?
Right.
Like, here, take them out. Like, no. It's so funny as we're talking about this. Like, I don't know if God was just trying to give me an opportunity to share it in this, like, in this form. But it's like this past week, I have been so not present. Like, and I felt it in my body. It started in my body. Like, I was just like feeling like just, you know, tense, uneasy. Like I just felt like my body was imbalanced, like internally, you know, how you can just kind of sense. I was like, what is going on? It's like there were things that bothered me, but it wasn't really situational. It felt like more like I just felt like uneasy and uncomfortable in my body. And I felt how that really impacted my ability to be present. Like I was just like on edge. I was cooking with my daughter yesterday and I couldn't really like enjoy the moments as much because I was just like so aware of my body being off. And I was just like so focused on that and just like, what is this? Like, why am I feeling this? And there was a redeeming moment where there was like I woke up, I had to take her to gymnastics. I hadn't showered yet, sorry. But I came back home, I showered, I ate something, and I felt a little bit better. And it was just amazing how, like, just doing that, I was able to like be a little more present. Now it didn't last the whole day because, like I said, my whole body was off. But it's like it's so interesting how that idea of being present is so connected with just like how we are feeling in our bodies. And if our bodies are out of whack, it's distracting, you know?
You just need to do a bit of self-care.
Yeah, I needed to dump her on Carrie and just be like, look,
Look after yourself a little.
just gonna go away. I'm gonna run away. No, that's not always the answer either. And as parents, we can't just run away. Sometimes it's just taking these small little moments of like taking a shower, you know, eating food, drinking water, moving, going on a walk, like things like that can like start to help us.
One of my favorite stories, and I apologize, I'm not going to be able to give you the exact reference, but it's in the Gospels. Story about Jesus. It says the crowd was pressing in on him, and he got in a boat and taught from a boat. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, let me humanize this Jesus moment here. He was being pressed in on all sides by a crowd of people. That does not feel good to anyone ever. I've never met someone who's like, yeah, make me a people sandwich. Like, I want to just be right in the middle there. Nobody likes that. And people weren't just crowding around him, but they were asking things of him. They wanted him to heal. They were hoping for him to, like, there was all these expectations, right? He didn't run away. He still completed his mission to teach, but he did it from the boat. I love that. I love that story. It's a perfect story of self-care. Jesus was like, guys, I'm overstimulated right now. Too many people touching me. And in his humanity, he was able to think that and do that without sin. Like, too many people touching me. I need to get in the boat and teach from the boat. And so that's what he did. I love that story. It's so great. It's a great example for all of us.
It makes so much sense.
Yes, so balancing. Well, maybe I can throw out one more question because this kind of connects with that of like just what are things we can learn about our bodies from Jesus. And so like even that, you know, just being able to take a little bit of space, being able to rest, being able to sleep, but anything else that we haven't talked about.
Well, I mentioned Sabbath earlier, and I just want to say again, I think if any of us as believers who are not taking time to actually put work down purposefully, we're really missing something so very important. And I know for me, it was many years ago, and we didn't have time to talk about this, but I have my own story of issues with my body. I have an autoimmune disorder, and when I was diagnosed I was basically told, like, you can go to work, but then you have to come home and lay in your bed. Like, you're very sick. And for 2 years, I did that. Very difficult. And that was when I had little kids, too. So it was really hard as a mom as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, one of the things that the Lord has taught me over time related to all of this is that it is so very good for us. There's a reason that he commanded us to Sabbath. He knows that we don't just need it for spiritual reasons of like, yeah, we know we're not in control. You're in control, God. Like that's good. Yes. But he also did it because there's such joy in recognizing that we are so much more than what we do. We are so much more than what we do, what we produce. Our bodies are so much more meaningful than how they look in the mirror, right? It just matters so much more than we could ever imagine. And we can't ever wrap our minds around that until we begin to actually do the good work of Sabbath. So that's something that I talk a lot with people about when I meet with them. And it's so interesting to me. A lot of the trauma survivors, I work a lot with trauma survivors, they have no concept of what it means to really rest. And there's all this scientific research, right, that says that the traumatized body never really comes back down to equilibrium. It's always on high alert. And so that's a huge part of our work, even just to take some small steps into what would it mean for you to explore this concept of rest and to recognize the goodness of it, not just as a way to be obedient to God, although it is obedience to God, but also to understand thriving, fullness of life. You're not going to get it if you don't ever rest.
Wow.
And so I think that's hugely important. That would be one main thing that I would want to lean into. And then I think just once again, I think Jesus does talk about that he came that we might have life and have it to the full. And that means a lot more than we might think it does. It doesn't just mean that, you know, he's giving us the ability to read our Bible and go to church and, you know, be in Christian community and serve others. Is all of that good and right? Yes, absolutely. But there's so much life that he has for us, and that includes our bodies. And he exemplified that in every way. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
I'm not thinking of like specific stories or specific things, but he's just such a good model. And here's the other thing that I love. He still has his body right now.
Yes.
His human body is he's still in it right now as he sits at the right hand of the Father, which shows us continually the importance of it, right?
Yes.
That we are embodied, and so is he. Like there's a joining with Jesus in that. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. Wow, Beth. I mean, speaking of modeling, you've modeled to us a way of thinking about this in just such a beautiful way. I feel like it wasn't what I expected. Like it was way better, just way better. Like you really got into our minds and made us think differently about this. And I think like hopefully a listener would hear this and go, wow, there's so much more to know. And even just like we're talking about the body, we're talking about physical health. We started off talking a little bit about fitness. Then we started talking about emotions. Then we started talking about rest and these beautiful things. And I was really struck by how much of this is integrative, like is about emotions, that so much of our experience is a feeling experience, you know, or an experiencing the body, however we can put that, a thinking about the body, a feeling about the body. So I appreciate that you just helped us see it that way, which gives us a lot more things we want to ask and read. And so make sure you follow Beth Broom, everybody, and we'll stay tuned for more from you as well. But thank you so much for being on Rise and Form today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for making it all the way to the end of the podcast with Beth Broom. Next week, we have Pastor Dave Teixeira, a pastor of Cedar Mill Bible Church in Portland, Oregon. Pastor Dave is going to be joining us to talk about relationships in Genesis, one of the most important areas of our lives that often has the most amount of struggle and dysfunction. Oh, and we're going to be watching Inside Out 2 next week and doing a reaction episode immediately after the movie. Andrea and I are going to get together and talk about some of our impressions, some of the ways it moved us, and even some insights that we might have biblically and psychologically about the movie. We hope it'll help all of us think critically about the movie itself and also just to have a little bit of fun. Alrighty, we'll see you next week.